A billionaire CEO, a man who'd once coldly abandoned his pregnant wife, found himself reeling, utterly stunned, as he watched her daughter, a carbon copy of himself in her determination, command a tech empire after 18 long years. You have precisely 60 seconds, Nicholas, to justify your presence in my office. Evelyn Carter's voice, though laced with steel, retained a silken quality as she stood regally behind her expansive desk. Her arms were crossed, her gaze a laser focused on the man who had once shattered her heart. Nicholas Grant, a titan of industry usually radiating an aura of unflappable command, looked diminished, the shock evident in the sudden graying of his complexion. Is she mine? His voice, usually a baritone rumble, cracked under the weight of the revelation. The CEO who just outbid me on the Richardson contract. Is she my daughter? Evelyn's perfectly composed facade didn't crack, but a storm of emotions flickered in the depths of her eyes. A potent cocktail of hard-won triumph and the ghost of old, lingering pain. Congratulations, Nicholas. It seems it only took you 18 years and the loss of $1 billion deal to finally inquire about your child. Have you ever stopped to consider the sheer audacity of fate? What transpires when the very person who cast you aside during your darkest hour suddenly reappears, drawn like a moth to a flame by your incandescent success? What would you do if the billionaire who walked away from you, dismissing your unborn child as a mere inconvenience, suddenly realized the magnitude of his mistake, only after you had painstakingly constructed an empire of your own? I'm Mr. Rich, and today's story is one of emotional warfare. A battlefield paved with betrayal, fueled by unwavering resilience, and culminating in the ultimate reckoning. It's the story of a man who, 18 years prior, chose the seductive allure of power over the sacred bond of family, and now must face the devastating consequences of his myopic decision. If you've ever felt underestimated, overlooked, relegated to the shadows, this story will resonate with the deepest fibers of your being. And if, like me, you believe that true success isn't measured in mere monetary wealth, but in the lasting legacy we leave behind, then prepare to witness one of the most profoundly satisfying reunions I've ever had the privilege to share. The first time Evelyn Carter laid eyes on Nicholas Grant, his vaunted wealth and power left her utterly unimpressed. As a brilliant financial analyst, armed with a master's degree from the hallowed halls of MIT, she had been headhunted to consult on the ambitious expansion of his sprawling tech empire, Grant Industries. At the young age of 32, Nicholas had already amassed a fortune that had propelled him onto the cover of Forbes magazine, cementing his reputation as a ruthless business strategist with an almost unnerving ability to anticipate market trends. Your profit projections are fundamentally flawed, Evelyn stated bluntly during their very first meeting, sliding a meticulously researched folder across his imposing mahogany desk. You're overestimating consumer adoption by at least 15%. And severely underestimating the infrastructural costs required to support such rapid growth. Instead of the explosion of anger she fully anticipated, Nicholas leaned forward, his usually cold, storm-gray eyes suddenly alight with an intense curiosity. Prove it. For the next 3 hours, the air in the room crackled with intellectual energy as they dissected numbers, debated market psychology, and wrestled with the complexities of technological integration. Nicholas's executive team, a collection of seasoned professionals accustomed to his unchallenged dominance, watched in stunned silence. No one dared to challenge Nicholas Grant, to dissect his carefully crafted projections, except for this woman. This woman in her sensible heels and her department store blazer, who fearlessly matched him point for point, never once flinching under his intense scrutiny. "Have dinner with me," he finally said, a predatory glint in his eye, after they had hammered out a mutually agreeable compromise on the revised projections. "I don't mix business with pleasure, Mr. Grant," Evelyn replied coolly. "Nicholas," he corrected, a genuine smile momentarily softening his otherwise severe features. "And this wouldn't be business, Evelyn. This would simply be me taking the most fascinating woman I've met in years to dinner." Their whirlwind romance unfolded with the same relentless intensity that characterized every facet of Nicholas's life. Private jets whisked them away for stolen weekend getaways in Paris. They engaged in intellectually stimulating midnight conversations about complex economic theories and the wistful dreams of their childhoods. Passionate nights were spent in his penthouse suite, overlooking the glittering cityscape that symbolized his hard-won empire. For 6 dizzying, intoxicating months, Evelyn found herself inexplicably falling for the man hidden beneath the impenetrable billionaire facade. The man who surprisingly read poetry, who carried the invisible weight of a childhood steeped in poverty, who confessed his deep-seated fear that nothing he ever built would truly feel like enough. "You're enough," she had whispered one night, their bodies intertwined in the luxurious silk sheets of his bed. "The empire is undeniably impressive, Nicholas, but it's the man who built it that I truly love." He had looked at her then, his eyes filled with something akin to wonder, a vulnerability she had rarely glimpsed. "I never thought I'd find someone who actually sees me, Evelyn, not just what I've managed to create." 2 weeks later, Evelyn found herself staring at the stark reality of a positive pregnancy test in her sterile bathroom, a maelstrom of conflicting emotions, terror, disbelief, and a hesitant joy surging through her system. They hadn't meticulously planned this, hadn't even explicitly discussed the possibility of having children. But as the initial shock began to subside, a quiet, undeniable certainty took root within her soul. This child, their child, was a gift, a new beginning, a tangible symbol of their love. She meticulously planned a special dinner at her modest apartment, filled with nervous anticipation, eager to share the life-altering news. Nicholas arrived late, his attention completely consumed by his phone, barely registering the soft glow of the candles or the carefully prepared meal that represented hours of loving labor. "I need to talk to you about something incredibly important," she began tentatively, reaching across the small table to take his hand. "Actually, I have news, too," he interrupted, finally looking up, his eyes gleaming with an almost manic excitement. "The Westridge merger is finally happening, Evelyn. The board officially approved it this morning. We're talking billions here. This will catapult Grant Industries into the global top 10. This is everything I've been working towards." "That's wonderful, Nicholas," she said sincerely, squeezing his hand, desperately trying to hold on to the fleeting joy she felt for him. "And it actually makes my news even more timely. Nicholas, I'm pregnant." The silence that followed felt like an eternity, stretching into an unbearable, suffocating void. She watched, her heart pounding in her chest, as a kaleidoscope of emotions chased across his face. Initial shock, followed by a flicker of confusion, and then something that looked terrifyingly like cold, calculating assessment. "Are you sure?" he finally asked, his voice suddenly distant, devoid of any warmth. "Yes, Nicholas. I'm about 8 weeks along." Nicholas stood abruptly, pushing his chair back with a jarring scrape. He began to pace her small living room, his brow furrowed in concentration. The timing couldn't be worse, Evelyn. This merger is at a critical stage. The Westridge board is notoriously conservative, rigidly traditional. They're already nervous about my age, my so-called Playboy image, fueled by those ridiculous tabloid articles. This could completely derail everything. "This isn't about your merger, Nicholas," Evelyn said, her carefully constructed joy rapidly curdling into a cold, heavy dread. "This is about our child. You don't understand the stakes here," he continued, as if she hadn't spoken, his voice rising in agitation. "This deal will fundamentally transform Grant Industries, securing our position for decades to come. I've dedicated my entire life to this moment." "And what about our moment, Nicholas?" Evelyn asked quietly, one hand moving instinctively, protectively, to cradle her still flat stomach. "What about our family?" Nicholas stopped pacing, his expression hardening into the familiar mask he wore during tough business negotiations. "We need to be practical about this, Evelyn. I'll set up a trust for the child, of course. Provide generous financial support, ensuring that you have everything you need. But publicly, right now, this would be a disaster. It would derail everything I've worked for." "You're talking about our baby like it's a PR problem, Nicholas," Evelyn said, disbelief coloring her voice. It's just the timing, Evelyn, he insisted, refusing to meet her gaze. After the merger is finalized, when things settle down, we can figure out the next steps. But right now, I need to focus. I have a crucial board meeting tomorrow. Evelyn, you need to understand. Get out, she said softly, the words laced with a chilling finality. Evelyn, please be reasonable, he pleaded, taking a step towards her. Get out, she repeated, standing now, trembling with a volatile mixture of heartbreak and fury. If you walk out that door, Nicholas, don't expect me to be waiting here when you finally decide the timing is finally right. His expression hardened, the fleeting glimpses of vulnerability she had witnessed over the past few months vanishing completely, replaced by the ruthless pragmatism that defined his public persona. You're being emotional, Evelyn. We can discuss this rationally when you're thinking clearly. I've never seen more clearly in my life, Nicholas, she whispered, her voice trembling with suppressed rage as he reached for the door. And neither have you. This is who you really are, Nicholas. A man who chooses a soulless acquisition over his own flesh and blood, over the chance to be a father. The door closed behind him with a quiet, decisive click that somehow resonated with more pain than if he had slammed it with all his might. Evelyn sank to the floor, her arms wrapped protectively around her middle, shielding the tiny life that had just lost its father before it had even drawn its first breath. 3 days later, Nicholas's high-powered lawyers arrived at her doorstep, bearing a stack of legal documents, a generous financial settlement, offered in exchange for her complete and unwavering silence, and a total severance of all his parental rights. The message was brutally clear. Nicholas Grant had made his choice, and it irrevocably wasn't them. The settlement money sat untouched in a separate bank account, gathering dust. As Evelyn navigated the challenges of pregnancy alone, she steadfastly refused to spend a single penny of what she privately referred to as the abandonment fund. Instead, she threw herself into her demanding work, aggressively pursuing extra consulting projects despite the debilitating morning sickness that plagued her first trimester. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Evelyn, her mother had cautioned during one of their weekly phone calls, her voice laced with concern. I'm not trying to prove anything, Mom, Evelyn had replied, one hand absently rubbing her growing belly. I'm building something for both of us. When Chloe Elizabeth Carter finally arrived on a snowy February morning, Evelyn gazed into her daughter's remarkable gray eyes, so achingly similar to Nicholas's, and silently made a solemn promise. This child would never question her own worth, would never feel like she wasn't enough, and would never know the crushing pain of being someone's second choice. The early years were a relentless blur of frantic daycare pickups, sleep-deprived late-night feedings, and building her burgeoning consulting business from the cramped confines of her kitchen table while Chloe slept soundly in her crib. Evelyn specialized in helping women-owned startups secure desperately needed funding, drawing on her own hard-won experience of achieving financial independence to guide others. Her unwavering reputation for shrewd financial analysis and genuine compassion spread like wildfire, attracting clients who couldn't afford the exorbitant fees of the larger, more established firms, but who desperately needed expert guidance to navigate the complex world of venture capital. How do you do it all, Evelyn? A weary client had once asked, watching in amazement as Evelyn simultaneously reviewed complex financial projections and patiently helped 4-year-old Chloe assemble a particularly challenging puzzle. One day at a time, Evelyn had answered with a tired but determined smile. And I constantly remind myself that everything I build, every sacrifice I make, is creating a solid foundation for her future. What her clients didn't know, what no one knew, was that Evelyn had been quietly, meticulously, making strategic moves of her own. Using her extensive financial expertise and the modest profits generated from her consulting work, she began carefully investing in the stock market, operating under the seemingly innocuous guise of a business entity she called Eve Carter Holdings. The thing about Nicholas, she explained to her reflection one quiet night after Chloe was finally asleep, is that he's always chasing the next big thing, the next disruptive innovation. He discards perfectly good companies with perfectly viable business models, simply because they're not growing quickly enough to satiate his insatiable appetite for exponential expansion. Those discarded companies, the ones Nicholas deemed unworthy of his precious time and capital, became Evelyn's specialty. She invested in them, consulted for them, helped them restructure their operations, and painstakingly find their unique niche in the ever-evolving marketplace. And slowly, steadily, Eve Carter Holdings grew from a mere paper entity into something truly substantial, a force to be reckoned with. Meanwhile, Chloe was blossoming into a remarkable young woman, a testament to Evelyn's unwavering love and dedication. By the age of 10, she was already programming her own sophisticated computer games. By 14, she had developed a groundbreaking app that helped small businesses efficiently manage their often chaotic inventory. Her exceptional intelligence was matched only by her profound compassion, a trait that Evelyn was most proud of cultivating in her daughter. "Mom, why don't I have a dad?" Chloe had asked once, her innocent question hitting Evelyn like a physical blow. After attending a father-daughter dance at her elementary school, Evelyn had been preparing for this inevitable question for years, carefully crafting her response, but it still felt like a punch to the gut. "You did have a father, sweetheart, but he simply wasn't ready to be a parent," she had answered honestly, choosing her words with meticulous care. "He made a choice, a difficult choice that hurt us both. But that choice, in a way, gave me you, and you, Chloe Elizabeth Carter, are without a doubt the best thing that has ever happened to me." Did he ever want to meet me? Chloe's remarkable gray eyes, so achingly similar to her father's, had been wide and curious, not yet tainted by the sting of rejection. "He made a business decision, honey," Evelyn had said carefully, trying to soften the blow. And sometimes, when people focus too much on business, they miss out on what truly matters in life. As Chloe entered her teenage years, her natural business acumen, her innate understanding of the intricate dance of commerce, became impossible to ignore. She interned at several of the companies that Eve Carter Holdings had invested in, absorbing everything from cutting-edge marketing strategies to the complex logistics of global supply chain management with remarkable speed and efficiency. "You're a natural, Chloe," the effusive CEO of Tech Fusion had told her after Chloe had identified a critical flaw in their outdated distribution system, saving the company millions of dollars. "Just like your mother." By 18, Chloe had graduated early from high school, blazing through her coursework with ease, and was already halfway through an accelerated business program at the same prestigious university where Evelyn had earned her own degree years ago. Mother and daughter had become a formidable team, their bond unbreakable, their shared ambition a driving force in their lives, though Chloe remained blissfully unaware of the full scope and power of Eve Carter Holdings, the company that had quietly grown from Evelyn's strategic investments into a significant player in the highly competitive tech industry. "I want you to run point on the Richardson acquisition, Chloe," Evelyn told her daughter on her 18th birthday, sliding a thick folder across the elegantly set dinner table in their modest but comfortable home. "Are you serious, Mom?" Chloe's eyes widened in disbelief as she eagerly flipped through the meticulously prepared documents. "Mom, this is a multi-million-dollar deal. The board will never approve of having me lead something this big." Evelyn smiled enigmatically, a hint of something mysterious dancing in her eyes. "The board already has, Chloe. In fact, they've approved something else, too." She handed Chloe another, crisply sealed envelope. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." Inside was an official letter, embossed with the Eve Carter Holdings logo, formally appointing Chloe Carter as the new CEO of Eve Carter Holdings, effective immediately. But you're the CEO, Mom," Chloe stammered, looking up in utter confusion. "I was, darling. Now, I'm the chairwoman of the board, and you're the CEO." Evelyn reached across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand, her heart swelling with pride. "You're ready for this, Chloe. You've been ready for this longer than you even realize." What Evelyn didn't tell her daughter, what she had carefully protected her from knowing all these years, was that the Richardson acquisition would, for the very first time, put them in direct competition with Nicholas Grant and his powerful Grant Industries. Nicholas had been circling the very same company, Richardson Technologies, for months, seeing it as a crucial strategic addition to his ever-expanding empire. He had absolutely no idea that the seemingly mysterious Eve Carter Holdings, The company that had been quietly acquiring undervalued companies in his shadow for years, was about to step into the blinding light, led by the daughter he had never met, the daughter he had so callously dismissed 18 years ago. Have you ever wondered what it truly feels like to rebuild yourself from the smoldering ashes of heartbreak? To transform the sting of rejection into the high-octane fuel that powers an unstoppable rise to prominence? If you're inspired by Evelyn's quiet determination to create an enduring legacy for her beloved daughter, then hit that like button right now. And if you're even remotely curious about what happens when Nicholas Grant finally comes face to face with the devastating consequences of his ill-fated choice 18 years ago, then subscribe to Mr. Rich Romance Stories for more captivating tales of justice, redemption, and the profound power of choosing what truly matters in life. The annual Global Innovation Summit was the most prestigious gathering in the entire tech industry. A high-stakes arena where massive deals were brokered, groundbreaking partnerships were formed, and the overall direction of the market was decisively shaped for the coming year. Nicholas Grant had been a fixture at the summit for over a decade, invariably commanding attention as he triumphantly announced Grant Industries' latest game-changing acquisition or technological breakthrough. This year, however, the fervent buzz wasn't about Nicholas Grant. It was about the enigmatic Eve Carter Holdings, the company that had seemingly materialized from thin air to become a significant player in the burgeoning field of sustainable technology, and about its equally enigmatic young CEO, who would be making her highly anticipated first public appearance at the summit. What do we know about this E. Carter? Nicholas asked his executive team the night before the summit, his voice tinged with irritation at the unwelcome shift in the industry's attention. Not much, sir, his chief of research admitted, shifting uncomfortably. The company is privately held, sir. The founder maintains an exceptionally low profile, sir. All we know is that they've been systematically acquiring companies that strategically align with a very specific vision of fully integrated sustainable technology. Companies we passed on, Nicholas's CFO added reluctantly, his face flushed with embarrassment. Companies that weren't growing fast enough, Michael? Nicholas corrected sharply, his gaze steely. What about this new CEO? Nicholas pressed, his impatience growing. Another tech bro with a hoodie and an inflated sense of his own importance, I presume? Actually, sir, it's a woman. Young. Reportedly brilliant. A Harvard Business School graduate at the ridiculously young age of 20, sir. But there's very little public information available on her, sir. Nicholas dismissed the briefing with a curt wave of his hand, his irritation simmering just below the surface. Eve Carter Holdings might be the current darling of the industry press, generating countless breathless headlines, but Grant Industries was still a global powerhouse, an established titan that dwarfed any upstart competitor. This fledgling company, and its mysterious young CEO, were merely the newest distraction in an industry that was perpetually chasing the next shiny object, easily seduced by fleeting trends. He couldn't possibly have known that the following morning would irrevocably change everything he thought he knew about his past, his present, and the uncertain future that lay ahead. The summit venue buzzed with palpable anticipation as Nicholas made his way through the throng of attendees, acknowledging competitors and allies alike with practiced ease. At 49, he cut an undeniably impressive figure, his hard-won success only enhancing his natural charisma. Elegant silver threads were artfully woven through his dark hair, and his impeccably tailored suit was a subtle but unmistakable display of wealth and power. Women still turned to watch him pass, their eyes filled with undisguised admiration. Men still straightened their ties and puffed out their chests when he approached, instinctively recognizing his alpha status. Nicholas Grant had built an empire, and he wore its gilded crown with unwavering confidence. Mr. Grant, your seat is in the front row, sir. An overly enthusiastic event coordinator gushed, guiding him toward the stage where the highly anticipated opening keynote address would soon begin. Who's speaking first? He asked absently, his attention still partially focused on his phone, where he was anxiously awaiting updates on the Richardson deal. His team had assured him that it was nearly closed, despite the unexpected and irritating competition from Eve Carter Holdings. The new CEO of Eve Carter Holdings, sir, the coordinator replied, practically bursting with excitement. It's quite a coup for the summit organizers, sir. It's her first public appearance. Nicholas settled into his reserved seat with mild curiosity, momentarily setting aside his simmering irritation over the Richardson deal. The house lights dimmed, creating an expectant hush, and the summit director took to the stage to warmly welcome the attendees and introduce the opening speaker. It is with immense pleasure that I introduce to you one of the most exciting new voices in our dynamic industry, the director announced, his voice booming through the venue. Though her company has operated quietly, diligently, until now, their innovative approach to sustainable technology integration has already revolutionized how we think about the very future of the tech landscape. Please welcome the new CEO of Eve Carter Holdings, Chloe Carter. The applause was polite but undeniably curious as a remarkably poised young woman walked confidently to center stage, her very presence radiating an undeniable aura of authority. Nicholas's casual interest instantly transformed into stunned disbelief as he took in her features, his breath catching in his throat. The determined set of her jaw, the intelligent gray eyes that scanned the audience with unwavering focus, the way she stood with her shoulders squared, effortlessly taking ownership of the vast space around her. It was like looking at a ghost, a specter from a past he had desperately tried to bury. Or, more accurately, a distorted mirror reflecting his younger self, softened by unmistakably familiar features that he had last seen on a woman he had walked away from 18 agonizing years ago. "Good morning," Chloe began, her voice clear and assured, carrying throughout the vast auditorium. "For those of you who are understandably wondering why you haven't heard of me before today, the answer is quite simple. Eve Carter Holdings firmly believes in letting our work speak for itself. We don't chase fleeting headlines. We create lasting solutions." Nicholas couldn't breathe. The world around him faded into a blurry haze as he stared, transfixed, at the young woman commanding the stage with such effortless grace and confidence. She had Evelyn's warm smile, her thoughtful way of pausing momentarily before making an important point, a subtle tick that he had once found endlessly endearing. But those eyes, those were undeniably his eyes. That unwavering confidence, the slight tilt of her head when challenging conventional wisdom, the very way she carried herself. He recognized himself in every gesture, every subtle nuance of her being. "Our latest acquisition, Richardson Technologies, represents everything we stand for at Eve Carter Holdings," Chloe continued, her voice ringing with conviction. "Richardson Technologies has been tragically overlooked by the major players in the industry, who were unable to see past its admittedly modest growth to recognize its truly revolutionary potential. Richardson Technologies, the Richardson deal. The company that Nicholas had been so aggressively pursuing for months, the acquisition his team had so confidently assured him was nearly secured. His mind raced, frantically trying to connect the seemingly disparate dots that had been scattered throughout his life for the past 18 years. "I am pleased to announce that as of 9 a.m. this morning, Richardson Technologies is officially a part of the Eve Carter family." Chloe smiled warmly as excited murmurs rippled through the captivated audience. "And we're just getting started." Nicholas barely heard the rest of her presentation, his eyes unblinkingly fixed on her face, cataloging every feature, every subtle expression, that confirmed what he already knew in his gut to be true. This was his daughter, the child he had so callously walked away from before she was even born. The baby he had signed away his rights to in exchange for Evelyn's silence and his precious merger. The merger that had indeed made Grant Industries a global powerhouse, just as he had so confidently predicted. The monumental business triumph that had ultimately cost him his very soul. As Chloe concluded her speech to thunderous applause, Nicholas remained frozen in his seat, utterly immobile, a tempestuous storm of conflicting emotions battling within him. Overwhelming pride at the brilliant, poised young woman she had become, a force to be reckoned with in her own right. Blind rage at Evelyn for keeping him in the dark, for robbing him of 18 precious years of fatherhood. Crushing grief for the countless milestones he had missed, the birthdays, the graduations, the simple everyday moments that he would never get back. And beneath it all, a sickening realization of what his ambition had truly cost him, a weight of regret so heavy that it threatened to crush him under its immense burden. He watched, his heart aching with a mixture of pride and despair, as Chloe was immediately surrounded by industry leaders, eager to speak with her, to glean insights from her undeniable brilliance. He observed how she effortlessly navigated the complex conversations with natural grace and sharp intelligence, how she commanded the room with her mere presence. His daughter, a complete stranger who carried his blood, his eyes, his very business instincts, yet who had been raised entirely without him, shaped by Evelyn's unwavering love and guidance. "Nicholas, are you all right?" His CO touched his arm hesitantly, visibly concerned by his uncharacteristic stillness. "You seem pale. Find out everything about her," Nicholas ordered, his voice low and urgent, barely a whisper. "Everything about Chloe Carter, and find Evelyn Carter now. I need to see her." The next 24 hours passed in a frantic blur of frantic activity, a dizzying whirlwind of revelation. His team worked tirelessly through the night, piecing together the story of Evelyn and Chloe Carter from public records, social media posts, and meticulously filed business documents. "Evelyn never remarried, sir," his head of security reported in a private briefing, his voice devoid of emotion. "She built a highly successful consulting firm specializing in women-owned businesses, sir. Chloe graduated top of her class from every school she attended, sir. There's no mention of a father in any public records, sir." "And Eve Carter Holdings?" Nicholas demanded, his voice tight with barely suppressed fury. "Founded 15 years ago, sir. Started small, sir. Strategic investments in companies that were undervalued or overlooked, sir. Many of them companies that Grant Industries considered but ultimately passed on, sir." The pattern was crystal clear now, achingly so. While Nicholas had been relentlessly chasing bigger deals, sensational headlines, and exponential growth, Evelyn had been quietly, steadfastly building something far more substantial, something far more enduring. Not just a soulless business empire, but a meaningful life for their daughter, a life filled with love, security, and unwavering support. A daughter who now stood as his direct competitor, who had just outmaneuvered him on a significant acquisition, who had confidently stepped onto the global stage without ever knowing the truth about her own parentage, without ever knowing who her father truly was. "Where is Evelyn now?" he asked, his voice barely audible, staring out the expansive window of his luxury hotel suite at the sprawling cityscape below, the city that he had conquered, but that now felt strangely empty. "She maintains an office downtown, sir. She's there now, sir. According to our sources, sir." Nicholas didn't bother waiting for the car. He walked the 15 blocks to the address he had been given, needing the physical exertion to clear his head, to steel himself for a confrontation he had been so carefully avoiding for nearly 2 agonizing decades. The building was modest but elegant, much like Evelyn herself had always been. Her company occupied the entire top floor, the reception area warm and inviting, tastefully decorated with lush plants and comfortable seating. "I need to see Evelyn Carter," he told the receptionist, his voice brooking no argument, not even bothering to give his name. "Do you have an appointment, sir?" the receptionist asked, her tone polite but firm. "No, but she'll see me," he replied, his voice leaving no room for doubt. The receptionist looked doubtful, but she made the call nonetheless. "Miss Carter, there's a gentleman here without an appointment who insists on seeing you, ma'am." A brief pause. "He didn't give his name, ma'am." Another pause. "Yes, ma'am." She hung up the phone and pointed to a door down the hallway. "Miss Carter will see you, sir. Last office on the right." The hallway seemed endless as Nicholas walked slowly toward the inevitable confrontation he had avoided for nearly 2 decades, the weight of his past decisions pressing down on him with each step. He paused at her door, taking a deep, steadying breath before finally knocking. "Come in." Evelyn's voice was just as he remembered it, warm but firm. A voice that had once told him he was enough, just as he was. A voice that had later ordered him to leave when he had irrevocably proven those words to be false. He opened the door to find her standing behind her desk, her arms crossed defensively across her chest. At 45, Evelyn Carter was still strikingly beautiful, though undeniably different from the naive young woman he had once known. There was an undeniable strength in her now, a hard-won confidence that hadn't been there before, etched into the lines around her eyes and the determined set of her jaw. Her dark hair was shorter, styled in a practical bob that perfectly framed her face. Her eyes, those deeply expressive eyes that had once looked at him with such unwavering love, now regarded him with weary caution, her gaze sharp and unforgiving. "You have precisely 60 seconds to explain why you're in my office, Nicholas," she stated, her voice cool and controlled. The familiar scent of her perfume, jasmine and something uniquely Evelyn, hit him like a physical blow, transporting him back in time. For a fleeting moment, he was transported back to their last night together, before he had known about the pregnancy, when he had held her close and briefly believed, against all odds, that he could be more than just his insatiable ambitions, that he could be the man she saw in him. "Is she mine?" His voice cracked, the carefully rehearsed question he had been repeating to himself during the long, agonizing walk over finally emerging raw and vulnerable. "The CEO who just outbid me on the Richardson contract. Is she my daughter?" Evelyn's perfectly composed expression didn't change, but something flickered in the depths of her eyes, a fleeting mixture of hard-won triumph and the lingering sting of old pain. "Congratulations, Nicholas. It seems it only took you 18 years and the loss of $1 billion deal to finally ask about your child." The confirmation, though entirely expected, hit him like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of his lungs. He sank heavily into the chair across from her desk, his legs suddenly unable to support his weight. "Why didn't you tell me, Evelyn?" he asked, his voice laced with a desperate plea, a surge of anger rising to mask his profound pain. "You had no right to keep her from me, no right to deny me the chance to be a father." Evelyn's laugh was sharp, disbelieving, devoid of any humor. "I had no right? You signed away your parental rights before she was even born. Nicholas, you made your choice very clear, Nicholas. Your precious merger was far more important than your own child." "That was different, Evelyn. I was different then," he argued weakly, running a trembling hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she remembered all too well from their tumultuous time together. "I would have been part of. If I had known how brilliant she would become, how much she would mean to me now, I would have done things differently." Nicholas began, his voice laced with regret. "Known what, exactly?" Evelyn's sharp interruption cut through the air. "That she would grow into a prodigy? That her brilliance would someday be an asset to your precious business interests? That's always been how you've measured worth, hasn't it, Nicholas? By the numbers, by the potential for profit?" "That's not fair, Evelyn," Nicholas protested, but the accusation stung, hitting too close to home. "I was young, driven. I was focused on building something." "So was I, Nicholas," Evelyn countered, her voice rising with controlled intensity. "I was building a human being. A person, not a company, not a portfolio, but a life, a soul. And I did it all without you. Without your money. Without a single damn thing from you except the bitter knowledge of exactly what you valued most. Your ambition." Nicholas stared at her, perhaps truly seeing her for the first time in years. The woman before him was not the young, heartbroken girl he had abandoned. She was a warrior, forged in the fires of his rejection. She had taken that pain, that betrayal, and transformed it into an unshakable strength. He saw it in her eyes, the steely glint of determination that burned brighter than any boardroom chandelier. Does Chloe know about me?" he finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. Evelyn's gaze hardened. "She knows her father chose his company over his family. She knows he signed away his rights to her before she was even born. She knows you wanted nothing to do with her." A pause, a cruel twist of the knife. "She doesn't know your name, Nicholas, and she's never asked." The realization that his daughter had grown up without even a flicker of curiosity about him struck Nicholas like a physical blow. He had imagined anger, resentment, perhaps even a desperate longing. But indifference, that was a different kind of pain, a cold emptiness that threatened to swallow him whole. "And now that I know, now that I've come crawling back, nothing has changed," Evelyn stated, her voice firm and unforgiving. Chloe is 18, the CEO of her own company, and she has never needed you. So, what exactly are you proposing, Nicholas? That you suddenly waltz into her life and announce yourself as the father who abandoned her? To what end? What possible good could come of that now? Nicholas leaned forward, his expression pleading. She's my daughter, Evelyn, my flesh and blood. I have a right. You surrendered your rights, Evelyn interrupted, sliding open a desk drawer with a sharp movement. She retrieved a familiar document, the legal agreement he had so meticulously crafted 18 years ago. The one your high-priced lawyers drew up to ensure you remained untainted by the responsibilities of fatherhood. Section 4, Paragraph 2. Nicholas Grant relinquishes all parental rights and responsibilities in perpetuity. Your signature is on the last page. She tossed it onto the desk, the crisp legal paper landing with a resounding thud. In case you've forgotten, Nicholas stared at the document, the physical embodiment of the worst decision he had ever made. The stark black ink was a permanent stain on his soul. I was wrong, he said quietly, the words heavy with remorse. I've been wrong for 18 years. Yes, you have, Evelyn replied, her voice softening slightly, not with forgiveness, but with the weary resignation of someone carrying a burden for far too long. But that doesn't give you the right to disrupt Chloe's life now because you've suddenly decided fatherhood might be interesting. After all this time, you don't get to rewrite history, Nicholas. It's not like that, Nicholas insisted, though even he wasn't entirely sure what it was like. The shock of seeing Chloe, of recognizing himself in her, had unleashed a torrent of emotions he hadn't known he was capable of feeling. I just want to know her. And what about what she wants, Nicholas? Evelyn challenged, her eyes blazing. Have you even considered that? Or is this, like everything else in your life, simply about what Nicholas Grant desires in this moment? Another acquisition, another conquest? The accusation stung, because it held a painful truth he couldn't deny. He hadn't thought about what Chloe might want or need. He had reacted to the discovery with the same impulsive possessiveness that characterized his business dealings, seeing something valuable and immediately wanting to claim it, regardless of the consequences. He'd seen a potential asset, not a person. Before he could respond, Evelyn's phone buzzed insistently. She glanced at it, then back at Nicholas, her expression closing off. I have a meeting. I think we're done here. We're not done, Evelyn, Nicholas declared, rising to his feet and attempting to gather his shattered composure. Not by a long shot. I want to meet her properly. That's not your decision to make, Evelyn retorted, moving toward the door, clearly dismissing him. If Chloe ever expresses interest in knowing you, I won't stand in her way. But I won't push her toward a relationship she hasn't asked for. Not with a man who decided, before she was even born, that she wasn't worth his time. As Nicholas walked back to his hotel, the city seemed different, sharper, more vibrant, as if the shock of discovery had somehow altered his perception of everything. The skyscrapers, once symbols of his ambition, now felt like cold, indifferent monuments to his failures. For 18 years, he had measured his life by acquisitions, expansions, and profit margins. He had filled his days with endless meetings and his nights with meaningless socializing, telling himself that the nagging emptiness he sometimes felt was simply the natural cost of ambition. Now, confronted with the living proof of what he had sacrificed, that emptiness revealed itself as something far more profound, a gaping wound that money couldn't heal. A void shaped exactly like the daughter he had never known and the life he had never allowed himself to live. Back in his opulent hotel suite, Nicholas found his legal team waiting with news that made his confrontation with Evelyn seem like a minor skirmish in comparison. We've completed our investigation into E. Carter Holdings. His chief counsel began, looking distinctly uncomfortable. There's something you need to know immediately. What is it? Nicholas asked. His voice strained as he poured himself a stiff drink with a hand that wasn't quite steady. The ice clinked against the glass, the sound echoing in the tense silence of the room. E. Carter Holdings owns a controlling interest in Grant Industries' parent company. The glass slipped from Nicholas's hand, shattering on the plush carpet. The amber liquid spread across the fibers, a sticky, symbolic mess. That's impossible. I would know if someone had acquired that level of shares. It was done gradually, meticulously, through a complex network of shell companies and investment vehicles. The lawyer explained, sliding a thick folder across the table. Very sophisticated structuring. They never triggered any disclosure requirements because no single entity crossed the threshold. But collectively, Carter Holdings effectively controls 51% of the voting shares. Nicholas stared at the documentation, the intricate web of acquisitions that had been unfolding right under his nose for years. He had been so focused on the day-to-day operations of his company, so consumed by his own ego, that he had failed to see the subtle but deadly shift in power. Evelyn, he whispered, understanding dawning. She didn't just build a company for Chloe. She systematically, brilliantly, took control of mine. There's more, his CFO added grimly, adjusting his tie nervously. The Richardson acquisition, it was strategic. With their technology patents combined with the controlling interest in our parent company, they could effectively force a merger on terms of their choosing. The realization hit Nicholas like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of him. For all his vaunted business acumen, all his much-celebrated strategic brilliance, he had been outmaneuvered, outplayed, outsmarted by the woman he had once dismissed as a mere distraction from his ambitions. While he had been building his empire through bold, headline-grabbing moves, Evelyn had been playing a longer, quieter, more deliberate game, and she had ruthlessly, irrevocably won. "What are our options?" he asked, his mind already racing through potential countermoves, desperate to regain some semblance of control. His legal team exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Limited," the chief counsel admitted. "We could challenge some of the acquisitions, but the paperwork appears impeccable." Miss Carter clearly had excellent legal advice or provided it herself. She always did see 3 moves ahead, Nicholas murmured, remembering Evelyn's sharp intellect, her unwavering attention to detail. He'd mistaken her quiet strength for weakness, her pragmatism for a lack of ambition. He'd been so wrong. For the first time in his career, Nicholas Grant found himself without a clear path forward, facing a strategic impasse he couldn't simply buy his way out of. The empire he had sacrificed everything for, including his own child, was now effectively controlled by the woman he had abandoned and the daughter he had never known. The irony was not lost on him. It was a bitter, gut-wrenching pill to swallow. That night, alone in his hotel suite, surrounded by the trappings of his success, Nicholas did something he hadn't done in 18 years. He allowed himself to truly think about what might have been. If he had made a different choice when Evelyn told him she was pregnant. If he had seen the pregnancy as a gift rather than an obstacle, a blessing rather than a burden. If he had recognized that building a family could be as meaningful, as fulfilling as building a company. He thought about birthdays and first steps, school plays and graduations, awkward teenage phases and triumphant college acceptances. All the precious, irreplaceable moments of Chloe's life that had passed without him, unseen, unshared, forever lost to him. He thought about the man he might have become with Evelyn's grounding influence, with the perspective that comes from prioritizing something beyond the next deal, the next acquisition. He might have learned empathy, patience, the art of unconditional love. And for the first time since he was a child, Nicholas Grant wept. He wept for the family he had rejected, for the father he had never become, and for the hollow victory of an empire built on the sacrifice of what might have truly mattered. The weight of his regret was crushing, a burden heavier than any balance sheet. Morning brought the news he had been dreading. Carter Holdings had called a press conference to make a major announcement regarding the future of both companies. The business world was buzzing with speculation about a hostile takeover, about the mysterious Carter finally revealing their full strategy. Nicholas watched the press conference from his suite, unable to face the public humiliation of attending in person. He paced the floor, his stomach churning with anxiety, as the financial analysts droned on about potential market impacts and shareholder value. Finally, Evelyn took the stage, elegant and composed in a tailored power suit, her demeanor radiating an aura of quiet confidence. The cameras flashed, capturing her every move as she surveyed the assembled journalists with an unwavering gaze. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and resonant, filling the room. "For those who don't know me, I am Evelyn Carter, founder and chairwoman of E. Carter Holdings." She paused, allowing her words to sink in, to establish her presence as a force to be reckoned with. Today marks a significant moment not just for our company, but for the future of sustainable technology. She outlined the vision that had guided her company's growth, a commitment to long-term sustainability over short-term profits, to creating technology that served humanity rather than exploiting it. She spoke with passion and conviction, her words painting a vivid picture of a future where business could be a force for good. Nicholas listened with growing admiration and bitter regret, recognizing the brilliance he had once been too self-absorbed to fully appreciate. He had dismissed her idealism as naivete, her concern for ethical business practices as a weakness. He had been so wrong. "It is my pleasure to announce that E. Carter Holdings and Grant Industries will be merging to create Carter Grant Global," she declared, her voice ringing with triumph. "A new entity dedicated to pioneering sustainable technology solutions for the challenges facing our world." The announcement sent immediate shockwaves through the business community. A merger, rather than a hostile takeover? And with the Carter name placed first, a clear and unambiguous statement about who held the power in this new arrangement. This merger represents not just the combination of two companies, but the integration of two philosophies. Evelyn continued, her expression serious. Grant Industries' innovation and market reach, combined with E. Carter's commitment to sustainability and ethical business practices. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. As part of this new beginning, there will be leadership changes. Effective immediately, Nicholas Grant will be stepping down as CEO of Grant Industries. Nicholas closed his eyes, absorbing the full weight of the public humiliation. This was her revenge, meticulously planned and flawlessly executed, 18 years in the making. She was taking from him what he had valued above all else, the position and power he had sacrificed his own child to attain. To lead Carter Grant Global into this new era, Evelyn continued, her voice laced with pride. "I am proud to introduce our new CEO, someone whose vision and values represent everything this merged company will stand for. Please welcome Chloe Carter." The cameras swiveled to focus on Chloe as she gracefully joined her mother on stage. The two women embraced briefly, a silent exchange of love and support, before Chloe stepped forward to take the microphone. Nicholas stared at the screen, transfixed. His daughter, the daughter he had never known, was now taking control of everything he had built. He felt a strange mixture of awe and devastation, pride and profound regret. "Thank you, Mother," Chloe began, her poise and confidence remarkable for someone so young. "And thank you to the board for this opportunity. Carter Grant Global will not simply be a larger version of our existing companies. It will be a new kind of corporation, one that measures success not just by profit margins, but by positive impact." As she outlined her vision for the company, Nicholas recognized echoes of both himself and Evelyn in her words. His relentless ambition tempered by Evelyn's unwavering commitment to humanity. His strategic thinking enhanced by her ethical framework. She was, in every way, the best of both of them, the living embodiment of what their partnership might have created beyond the personal, had he been brave enough to choose it. She was everything he had dreamed of being, and so much more. The press conference ended with a standing ovation, the business world already scrambling to adjust to this new reality. Analysts were revising their projections, competitors were reassessing their strategies, and Nicholas Grant was left alone in his hotel suite, a fallen king in his empty castle. He turned off the television. The image of his daughter's triumphant face still burned into his mind. He sat in silence, contemplating his future. A future without the company that had been his identity for decades, without the power and position he had sacrificed everything to achieve. Transitional segment. Commentary. Have you ever wondered if the choices we make in pursuit of success are truly worth what we give up along the way? Have you ever found yourself at a crossroads, forced to choose between ambition and the people you love? Hit that like button right now and share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're curious about whether Nicholas will finally face the consequences of his choices, or if there might be a path to redemption after 18 years of absence, subscribe to Mr. Rich Romance Stories for the thrilling conclusion of this emotional journey. Narrative resumes. The merger announcement dominated business headlines for days. Financial analysts debated the strategic implications. Industry insiders speculated about the future of Carter Grant Global, and the tabloids, always hungry for drama, dug into the personal histories of the key players, searching for the scandalous story behind the carefully crafted public image. 3 days after the press conference, Nicholas received a formal invitation to the merger ceremony, a courtesy extended to the outgoing CEO, though his presence was clearly optional rather than required. The gold-embossed card felt heavy in his hand, a symbol of his diminished status. For hours, Nicholas stared at the invitation, turning it over and over in his hands as he considered his options. He could refuse to attend, maintaining what little dignity he had left. He could launch a desperate legal battle to fight the merger, though his legal team had made it clear that such efforts would likely be futile, a costly and ultimately embarrassing waste of time. Or he could face the consequences of his choices with the same brutal honesty and unwavering directness that Evelyn had shown in rebuilding her life after his abandonment. The night before the ceremony, Nicholas found himself driving to the address listed in Evelyn's file, the modest but elegant suburban home where she had raised their daughter. The house was bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, the neatly manicured lawn a testament to Evelyn's dedication. He sat in his rented car for nearly an hour, watching the soft light spilling from the windows, gathering the courage to do what he knew he needed to do. Finally, he took a deep breath, opened the car door, and approached the house. He walked up the stone path and knocked on the door, his heart pounding with an anxiety that was completely foreign to a man accustomed to commanding boardrooms and negotiating billion-dollar deals. Evelyn answered the door, her expression a mask of carefully controlled surprise. Surprise flickered across her face, quickly replaced by a cautious neutrality, as if she had been expecting him but still wasn't entirely sure what to expect. "Nicholas," she said, her voice cool and reserved. "This is unexpected." "I know," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry for coming unannounced. I didn't know how else to." He stood awkwardly on her doorstep, suddenly acutely aware of how presumptuous his visit was, how much he was intruding on the life she had so carefully constructed without him. "May I come in? Just for a few minutes?" he asked, his eyes pleading. Evelyn hesitated for a moment, then stepped back, allowing him into the home she had built without him. The act felt like a small concession, a tentative olive branch extended after years of silence. The living room was warm and inviting, filled with the comforting clutter of a life well lived. Books lined the shelves, family photos adorned the walls, and a faint scent of vanilla hung in the air. It was a space that spoke of love, laughter, and quiet contentment, a space that felt utterly foreign to him. Nicholas was drawn immediately to the photographs of Chloe through the years. A toddler with a missing front tooth and a mischievous grin, a serious elementary student receiving an academic award, a confident teenager in a graduation cap and gown, her arm draped protectively around her mother's shoulders. Each picture was a painful reminder of all he had missed, all the milestones he had failed to witness. "She's at a business dinner," Evelyn said, noticing where his attention had drifted. Her voice was devoid of emotion, neither condemning nor encouraging. "If you came to see her, you're out of luck." "I came to see you, actually," Nicholas said, turning away from the photographs, the visual evidence of all he had missed too painful to bear. "I wanted to give you this." He reached into his pocket and handed her a sealed envelope. It was not the merger invitation, but something far more personal, something far more significant. Inside was the original contract he had forced her to sign 18 years ago, the document that had irrevocably severed his parental rights in exchange for her silence. Across each page, in bold red ink, he had scrawled a single defiant word: void. "What is this supposed to mean?" Evelyn asked, her voice carefully controlled, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "It means I was wrong," Nicholas said simply, his voice thick with emotion. It means I made the worst mistake of my life when I walked away from you and our child. It means I'm sorry, though I know that's wholly inadequate for 18 years of absence. It's the closest thing I have to an apology." Evelyn stared at the voided contract, her face a complex tapestry of conflicting emotions. Disbelief, confusion, and a flicker of something that might have been hope chased across her features too quickly for him to decipher. "Why now, Nicholas?" she finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why after all this time? Because she's successful? Because she's taken control of your company? Would you even be here if she were a struggling artist or a teacher, or anything other than the business prodigy who outmaneuvered you?" The questions cut deep, because they exposed the core of his own self-doubt, the insidious voice that whispered in the back of his mind, questioning the sincerity of his newfound remorse. It was a doubt he had been wrestling with ever since he had seen Chloe on that stage, radiating confidence and competence. "I don't know," he admitted, the honesty costing him more than any business negotiation ever had. "I'd like to think I would, but I can't prove that. All I know is that seeing her, recognizing myself in her, made me understand what I threw away. Not just a relationship with my daughter, but the chance to be something more than the sum of my acquisitions. The chance to be a decent human being." Evelyn's expression softened slightly at his honesty, the rigid lines of her face relaxing ever so slightly. "What exactly are you hoping for here, Nicholas?" she asked, her voice tinged with weariness. "Forgiveness? A relationship with Chloe? Your company back?" "I don't expect forgiveness," he said quietly, shaking his head. "I haven't earned it. I know I can't undo the past, and I'm not asking you to forget it. As for Chloe," he paused, choosing his words with agonizing care. "I would like to know her if she's ever willing, but I understand that has to be her choice, not mine. I won't force myself into her life." "And the company?" Evelyn pressed, her eyes searching his. He shook his head, a faint smile playing on his lips. "She'll do better with it than I ever did. I see that now. She has the vision and the values to take it to new heights." "Then what do you want, Nicholas?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "A chance," Nicholas said simply. "Not to rewrite history because that's impossible, but to acknowledge it. To stop pretending that success in business could ever fill the void left by the family I walked away from." Evelyn studied him for a long moment, her gaze unwavering, searching for the truth behind his carefully chosen words. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she nodded slightly, a barely perceptible movement of her head. "The ceremony is tomorrow at 2 o'clock, she said, her voice still guarded but lacking the icy edge it had possessed earlier. "Chloe will be giving the keynote address." She handed him back the voided contract, the red ink a stark reminder of his past mistakes. "Keep this. Keep it as a reminder of what choices really cost." As Nicholas turned to leave, Evelyn called after him, her voice softer now. "She has your strategic mind, but her heart, her understanding that business is ultimately about people, not just profits. That she figured out on her own. That's all her, Nicholas." It was perhaps the kindest thing she could have said, an acknowledgement that their daughter had inherited his strengths without his fatal flaws. It offered him a glimmer of hope, a sense that something good, something worthwhile, had emerged from the wreckage of their past. The merger ceremony was held in the grand ballroom of the city's most prestigious hotel. The space had been transformed with elegant floral arrangements, state-of-the-art lighting, and subtle branding that seamlessly blended the corporate identities of Grant Industries and E. Carter Holdings. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation, a mix of excitement and uncertainty as the business world waited to see what the future held. Nicholas arrived early, deliberately choosing a seat near the back of the room, away from the cameras and the curious eyes of his former colleagues. He felt like an outsider, a ghost haunting his own past. The event proceeded with the choreographed precision typical of major corporate announcements. Board members spoke about synergy and market position, financial officers presented projected growth charts, and marketing executives unveiled the new company logo. It was a slick, polished presentation, designed to reassure investors and project an image of strength and unity. Through it all, Nicholas watched Evelyn and Chloe seated at the head table. Mother and daughter, a united front that had succeeded despite his absence, not because of it. They were a force to be reckoned with, and he couldn't help but feel a surge of pride, mixed with a profound sense of regret. Finally, it was time for Chloe's address. She approached the podium with the confidence and poise of someone twice her age. Her gray eyes, his eyes, scanned the room briefly before she began to speak. Today marks not just the merger of two companies, but the integration of two visions, she began, her voice clear and compelling. Grant Industries has long been known for innovation and market dominance. Carter Holdings has built its reputation on sustainable growth and ethical business practices. Together, as Carter Grant Global, we will demonstrate that these approaches are not mutually exclusive, that a company can be both profitable and purposeful. Nicholas listened with growing pride and a deepening sense of regret as she outlined her vision for the future. A vision that somehow honored the best of what he had built while transforming it into something more meaningful, more impactful than he had ever imagined. She was taking his legacy and turning it into something truly exceptional. I would not be standing here today without the guidance and wisdom of my mentor, the founder of Carter Holdings. Chloe continued, turning to smile at Evelyn. My mother saw possibilities where others saw limitations. She taught me that true leadership isn't about power or control, but about creating opportunities for others to succeed. The room erupted in applause, a spontaneous and genuine outpouring of appreciation for the woman who had built something remarkable while raising an equally remarkable daughter. Nicholas joined in, his eyes never leaving Evelyn's face as she accepted the recognition with characteristic grace. She had earned every ounce of it. In closing, Chloe said as the applause faded, her voice resonating with sincerity, I want to acknowledge that every success story is built on choices, some visible, some hidden. The choice to persist when conventional wisdom says to quit. The choice to prioritize long-term vision over short-term gain. The choice to measure wealth not just in dollars but in impact. Her words seemed almost eerily directed at him, though Nicholas knew she couldn't possibly be aware of his presence in the back of the room. Still, they landed with the precision of arrows, finding the exact center of his regret, the very heart of his past failures. As the ceremony concluded and the attendees began to move toward the reception area, Nicholas made his way against the flow of the crowd, his heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. He was approaching the head table, where Evelyn was gathering her things. She looked up as he neared, a silent question in her eyes. Her expression was unreadable, a carefully constructed mask that revealed nothing of her inner thoughts. She's extraordinary, Nicholas said quietly, his voice barely audible above the din of the crowd. You did that, Evelyn. You raised her to be everything I could have been, but wasn't. She did most of it herself, Evelyn replied, though her expression softened slightly at the genuine admiration in his voice. She's always been determined to forge her own path. Like her mother, Nicholas smiled slightly, then grew serious again. I know I have no right to ask this, but would you introduce me? Not as her father, I haven't earned that title. Just as Nicholas Grant. I'd like to at least shake her hand, to tell her how impressed I am with her vision for the company. Evelyn hesitated, weighing his request against her protective instincts. She wanted to shield Chloe from any further pain, but she also recognized the genuine remorse in Nicholas's eyes. Finally, she nodded, a small, almost imperceptible movement of her head. Wait here, she said, her voice soft but firm. She moved through the crowd to where Chloe was surrounded by well-wishers, speaking briefly in her ear. Chloe glanced in Nicholas's direction, a flicker of curiosity evident in her expression, before excusing herself and following her mother back to where he waited. Chloe, this is Nicholas Grant, Evelyn said simply, her voice devoid of emotion. The founder of Grant Industries, Mr. Grant. Chloe extended her hand, her grip firm and confident. Your reputation precedes you, Mr. Grant. As does yours, Miss Carter, Nicholas replied, fighting to keep his voice steady as he shook the hand of his daughter for the first time. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through him, a tangible connection to the child he had abandoned. Your speech was truly impressive. Your vision for the company is more innovative and impactful than anything I could have ever imagined. Thank you. Chloe studied him with those gray eyes that were so like his own. She tilted her head slightly in an evaluating gesture that hit him like a physical blow. It was exactly his own mannerism when assessing someone new, a habit he had passed down to her without even knowing it. I hope you don't feel we've been unfair in the restructuring, she said, her voice cool and professional. Your innovations laid the groundwork for everything we're building. No, not unfair at all, Nicholas assured her, shaking his head. Sometimes, fresh perspectives are exactly what a company needs to evolve. I think Carter Grant Global will be extraordinary under your leadership. A colleague called Chloe's name from across the room, signaling an urgent matter. If you'll excuse me, she said, her duty calls. Perhaps we can continue this conversation another time. I'd be interested in hearing more about the early days of Grant Industries. I'd like that very much, Nicholas said, his heart constricting at this small opening, this tentative possibility. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't recognition, but it was a chance, a glimmer of hope on the horizon, a door not quite closed. As Chloe walked away, Evelyn turned to Nicholas, her expression softening slightly. That's all for now, she said quietly. She doesn't know who you are, and today isn't the time to tell her. I need to prepare her. I understand, Nicholas said, nodding. He knew that revealing the truth about their relationship was a decision that only she could make. He wouldn't pressure her. He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. This is for you, he said, offering it to her. Not a bribe, not an attempt to buy forgiveness. Just the return of something that should have been yours all along. Evelyn opened the box, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside lay a simple platinum band, tarnished with age but still radiating a quiet elegance. It was the wedding ring he had given her during their brief marriage, the ring she had returned along with his uncashed checks after Chloe's birth. I kept it, Nicholas admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. All these years, I told myself it was just forgotten in a drawer, but the truth is, I couldn't bear to part with it. It was the last tangible connection to the only time in my life when I was close to being the man I should have been. Evelyn stared at the ring, memories flooding back of a younger, more hopeful version of herself, the woman who had believed in Nicholas's potential to be more than his ambitions. The weight of the past settled heavily between them, a silent reminder of what had been lost. I'm not asking for another chance with you, he clarified quickly, his voice urgent. I know that door closed 18 years ago. I'm not expecting you to forgive me. I just wanted you to have it back. A small acknowledgement that what we had was real, even if I wasn't brave enough to choose it over my ambitions. Evelyn closed the box without taking the ring. Her gaze was fixed on some distant point, lost in the memories of a life that might have been. But her expression had lost some of its guardedness, the rigid lines of her face softening ever so slightly. You're right that we can't go back, Nicholas, she said, her voice tinged with sadness. Too much has happened. Too many years have passed. The scars are too deep to ever fully heal. She paused, choosing her next words with excruciating care. But perhaps with time and patience, there might. Here's the final segment, translated and expanded upon in a deeply creative style. Could be a path forward. Not a nostalgic return to what might have been, to some idealized, unlived life, but a bold step toward something entirely new. Something that honored the echoes of the past, acknowledging its lessons and the weight of choices made, without allowing it to define the present or shackle the future. I'd like that, Nicholas murmured, his voice barely audible. A fragile hope whispered into the vast space of the ballroom. Whatever form it takes, he added almost to himself. His gaze remained fixed on Evelyn as she moved gracefully to rejoin their daughter. Chloe, a radiant young woman, a beacon of intelligence and strength, stood as a living paradox, a testament to both his most devastating failure as a father and his most unexpected, enduring legacy. In that moment, amidst the glittering chandeliers and the murmur of celebratory conversations, Nicholas Grant, a man who had scaled the heights of wealth and power, finally grasped a truth that had eluded him throughout his meteoric rise. He understood, with a clarity that stung like ice water, that true success wasn't tallied in acquisitions or dominance of the market. It was, instead, etched into the lives we touched, the hearts we nurtured, and the love we consciously chose to prioritize above all else. 18 years ago, he had made the wrong choice, a choice that reverberated through time, valuing the intoxicating allure of ambition over the quiet, enduring strength of the family he could have built. That single decision had cost him nearly 2 decades of precious moments with his daughter, transforming the woman he loved into a formidable, albeit distant, force. It had left him wealthy beyond measure, a king in the realm of commerce, yet profoundly, achingly alone in the kingdom of his own heart. But now, standing within that opulent ballroom, watching Chloe command the room with her incisive intellect and unwavering vision, seeing the remarkable woman Evelyn had become in his absence. A woman forged in the fires of adversity, strong and independent, Nicholas felt a flicker of something he hadn't experienced in years. It wasn't the sharp, gnawing pang of regret for what he had irrevocably lost. Instead, it was a nascent hope for what might still, against all odds, be possible. Not redemption. He knew he hadn't earned that absolution yet. But perhaps, with the passage of time, with genuine humility, and with a steadfast commitment to change, he might earn a chance to be a part of the extraordinary legacy that had flourished, vibrant and strong, despite his absence. A legacy built not on his name or his vast wealth, but on the indomitable strength of the woman he had once abandoned and the unwavering spirit of the daughter who had never needed him to succeed. As he quietly exited the ceremony, Nicholas allowed himself one last, lingering glance back. He saw Evelyn and Chloe standing together at the heart of the celebration, a celebration they had earned through their own sheer merit and unwavering determination. Mother and daughter, a formidable team, united in purpose and unbreakable in spirit, had outmaneuvered him not out of a thirst for vengeance, but out of a clear, unwavering vision, seeing opportunities where he had been blinded by profit, building genuine, lasting connections where he had only created cold, calculated transactions. In that single, illuminating moment, Nicholas Grant, the billionaire, the business titan, the absent father, finally understood the true, devastating cost of the contract he had signed 18 years ago. It wasn't measured in the companies he had lost or the vast fortune now controlled by others. Its true price was calculated in the countless moments never shared, in the deep, meaningful relationships never built, in the thriving family that had flourished not because of him, but in spite of him. And perhaps that was the most powerful, enduring lesson of all. That true wealth isn't found in the mountains of possessions we accumulate, but in the precious, fleeting moments and the profound connections we consciously choose to value while we still have the chance to choose. If this story resonated with your heart, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to Mr. Rich Romance Stories. Your support means the world to me and fuels my passion for continuing to share these powerful tales of redemption, justice, and the enduring quest for the true meaning of success. I'd also love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced a difficult choice between ambition and the relationships that matter most? Do you believe someone like Nicholas deserves a second chance after walking away from his family? Or are some wounds simply too profound, some damage too extensive to ever truly repair? Remember, the choices we make today are the very building blocks of the legacy we leave behind tomorrow. Choose wisely, choose compassionately, and never, ever forget that no amount of worldly success can ever truly compensate for failure in the relationships that ultimately define us.